Action. Action.
And action. So I'll ask again. The question was the question before we started recording was about this thing with Chat GPT. And there's so much going on with AI and the benefits of AI in the nonprofit space and all of that great stuff. And so what I saw was the action figure where you could use Chat GPT to make yourself an action figure. And so I asked that question of, was there anyone else that made one? And if so, to raise your hand. And I know here's my person. I know one, at least one other person did it. All right. And so, and you create these little action figures, and the ones that hold on, hold on. We know what happened. Got to come off camera. So we know what happened. And if you don't, I'll tell you. Hold on. All right. 2 seconds. And hopefully it's going to last long enough for me to.
Well, I'll jump. Mary, I'll jump in. You good?
Let me fix that and I'll be right back.
All right. Mary's a two-time cancer survivor, and she has dealt with a lot of chemo, and it has its challenges or consequences, and so part of that is dental for her. She was supposed to go in for dental surgery today. It got pushed back at least a week, and so she's still kind of dealing with the challenge, and so that's part of it. So I don't know exactly what she was saying, but I'm gonna just share a little bit about the Charitable Roundtable for our newbies here. This is something that's been going on for over 10 years now. Back in 2015, my name's Frank Hagan, just my background. I am an entrepreneur. I do a lot with respect to professional networking, connecting professionals. I have an organization that's essentially what I do, is connect small business people to one another. At any rate, as my kids were moving through high school, I was running out of things to kind of volunteer for, and I was looking for that next thing to kind of give back to the world. And I thought, I know various not-for-profits. I'm just going to invite them in and see if getting together, if there's a benefit to that. So January of 2015, I just had just a luncheon, invited a handful of people in, and they shared a lot of great information. And I just said, you want to continue to do this? And they said yes. And so we continued to get together. It was the second Friday of every month in person in Columbus, Ohio. And then in just March of 2020, well, actually, we had a meeting March of 2020, and nobody was there. People were just like totally freaked out. April 2020, it went online, and that was a bad thing because this thing I had built, and we were getting 20, 25 people showing up in person in Columbus, Ohio. All of a sudden, we're not showing up anymore, and what's going to happen to this thing? And so we made made lemonade out of lemons, and we went online, and people ask me all the time, are you going to bring it back in person? And my answer is no, I'm not bringing it back in person because I get to meet way more wonderful people. Not that the people here are bad, but they can come online. But here I get to meet people from, Leah's out in Portland. We get people all over, and couldn't do this if couldn't do this if we were in person. The best I could do is say, hey, Genevieve, you need to do this in New York City. It really works well. We have a lot of fun. A lot of great information is being exchanged. And then Genevieve might do it. She might not do it. I don't know. So that's where this came from. And the types of people that are on here, I am not a not-for-profit. I have a for-profit business. But I enjoy being involved in trying to help not-for-profits connect with one another. And earlier, or midpoint last year, at some point last year, I told Mary Jenkins and one other who's not with us today, I need help. I need help. There's a lot to this, and I have a lot going on in my business. And so Mary has kind of jumped in and been part of the steering committee, Genevieve as well, Crystal as well. And I'll just make this quick plug. If you want to get involved in this and help us continue to grow it, come up with ideas for different programs, we would love to have it. We may reach out to you anyways and say, hey, the as far as the time commitment, it might be reading an email here or there. Hey, we should do this. We should do that. Hey, I know this person who could come in and speak. Um, that's what we mean by involvement. So it's not like we're having these hour-long board meetings. There's no raising money. In fact, I got interviewed about the Charitable Roundtable, and they just said, "Well, what's its budget like?" We have never taken a dime. It's all just been underwritten by so and so Zoom, somebody else doing this. So there's no fundraising. So anyhow, I'll turn it back to you, Mary.
Thank you. So, okay, sorry about that, guys. But those of you that have been here before, you have heard about the fact that I have mastered my greatest fear, which was to be speaking in public and have part of my denture, that's the middle part, come out while I'm speaking. So it's already happened. And so now when it happens, I just, excuse me, and I got to put it back in. But it's okay because I'm getting ready to have a major surgery that's going to resolve all of it. So we can talk about that another time. But back to the Charitable Roundtable because it is what is most important today. So in awe, like it no longer affects me. So yay! But today's Charitable Roundtable, one of the things that we have done, and thank you, Frank, for giving the history of the Charitable Roundtable and where we are and inviting people to be part of the steering committee. Well, one of the things that we have done is look to identify things that could really, really benefit those that are in the nonprofit space, from beginning, whether they're a new one, whether they're thinking about becoming a nonprofit, are a nonprofit, or are an experienced nonprofit. And so we look for different topics. And so as we were having our last powwow, the conversation surrounding board members, came up, and all things board, and how do you have a board, and what is a board like, and do you have a working board or a non-working board, and boards are forever, and all things governing board. And so we say, we want to have a conversation about it, but do it different. And do it different because there's so much to share. And so fortunately, we have someone that I consider an expert. This individual has helped me tremendously when I didn't understand boards, when I was frustrated by my board, when I wanted to fire my board, when I wanted to, you name it, my board. This person came in and was able to help me to see and understand the roles of a board. And that person is none other than Mr. Dean Pulliam. He is the lead chirper for Pulliam Consultants, where he provides support. And so the discussion that he's going to have today, I encourage you to get a pen and a piece of paper. I'm already ready. He's going to share some information that I know will help you if you are in the nonprofit space, if you love nonprofits or whatever. And so I will close down my talking and pass it on over to Dean and let him share. And welcome, Dean. Everyone, welcome, Dean.
Thank you, Mary. You never cease to embarrass me. It has been an honor and a privilege to be affiliated with Mary Jenkins, who considers me an expert, which is nothing more than a former drip. So I will begin to share my screen. And oh, we're back to that again. There we go. Finally mastered all the clicks. Well, today is the first of a 3-month series, and we're dealing with part one today, obviously, um, in creating, managing, and living with the board of trustees or directors. The proper legal terminology is trustee, and that particular term has some implications that we're going to talk about a little bit later regarding the moral owners of your nonprofit organization. Um, Today's part one, we're going to be talking about figuring out where and how to begin. And just like the Munchkins told Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz, it's always best to start at the beginning. So we're going to start at the beginning today. Um, Frank, will these slides be available to everybody afterwards?
Um, the recording will be, if you want to get me the slides, or I guess we'll get Crystal the slides.
Okay.
Anybody who's registered, we have their email address and we can get these out to everybody. So, but this recording will go up on YouTube within an hour of this ending.
All right. Well, if anybody would like the slides from today's program, you could contact me as well. My contact information is in the chat. But this is the background information about who I am and what I've done for the last several years. Since I was 17 years old, I've been working in the nonprofit sector. So that's more than 20 years, but I won't say how many. And so I bring that experience, both good and bad, positive and negative, and all of my enlightenments and discoveries to this conversation with the intent of trying to help other people know and understand how to best deal with their governing board. Uh, like Dorothy, beginning at the very start of the yellow brick road, it's important to begin to understand where you fit in the general scheme of things in the world, in your environment as a nonprofit. And because I'm located in Ohio, most of these statistics are based in Ohio, but they can be extrapolated and applied to your state wherever you might be located. Nebraska may have a few less nonprofit organizations across the state than here in Ohio, simply because of a smaller population. But proportionally, you're dealing with the same kind of impact. There may not be 14,000 charities in Lincoln, but in the Columbus metropolitan area in Ohio, there are 14,000 nonprofit organizations. And that, of course, is impacted by the fact that it is a state capital where a lot of statewide associations and networks are also housed and located. In a 21 county footprint around central Ohio, there are 33,000, and across the whole state, 56,000 charities exist in Ohio. I did a program recently for an organization in Indiana, and I did the research. They have 43,000 nonprofit organizations across the state of Indiana. So going back to the conversation earlier, the states that begin with I's and vowels across central United States would have similar kinds of numbers, I think. Across the United States, there are 1.75 million nonprofit organizations, and that would give you a bit of an understanding the level of competition that you face with regard to recruiting board members, securing and retaining staff, gathering and soliciting nonprofit contributions is becoming much more competitive. And that is because that 1.75 million charities continues to increase by about 100,000 or 125,000 every year. The footnote at the bottom is that 1.75 million charities does not include the additional 150,000 across the U.S. that are being supervised by fiscal sponsors. And those particular nonprofits have not yet applied for 501c3 status with the IRS. Charities are not just do-good organizations, they are legal entities. And here in Ohio, they are governed, if you will, by the nonprofit law in the state of Ohio, which is affectionately referred to as Chapter 1702. For organizations, and this is a love language that Mary and I share, for organizations, charitable organizations that do gaming of any kind, which could include bingo, uh, lottery games, um, raffles, and practices that involve chance of any kind. An additional chapter applies here in Ohio, chapter 2915. And I would suspect a similar kind of setup occurs in every state that you're located in. And it's always to your benefit to know and understand what those legal code requirements are for you to stay in compliance. And just to,
Quick question.
yep,
If anyone has questions, are we able to chime in?
absolutely. You'll have to help me because I can only see 3 or 4 screens at a time.
Okay.
Clarifying terminology. Frank and I speak about nonprofit organizations with different vernacular. Frank refers to them historically, and I know out of rote practice time after time, as not-for-profits, and it just kind of rolls off his tongue. You can talk about nonprofits with a hyphen. It's a little hard to detect that verbally, but you can also recognize nonprofits with a single word, no hyphen, and sans the for element in the middle of the terminology. They all mean exactly the same thing. There's no differentiation, at least in Ohio law or in federal regulation that I've ever seen, that makes a difference between these 3 applications of the term. Here in Ohio, you can create an organization as a nonprofit organization, a charity. You can create it as a nonprofit social enterprise or a for-profit social enterprise with directed giving to support identified charity enterprises. Or you can also create a B corporation or a benefit corporation, which was first legally permitted here in Ohio in 2021. Prior to that, there were 18 other states, including Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, and I believe New York, who predated that 2021 date with the eligibility of creating a B corporation. So sometimes if you are an inspired entrepreneur and you want to begin a nonprofit effort of some kind, it does not necessarily always need to be structured and incorporated as a nonprofit. It could be incorporated as a for-profit enterprise or as a B Corp with social benefiting activities and pledges as a part of your operating plan. To freak a number of entrepreneurs out with regard to nonprofit corporation development, the owner of a nonprofit or organization or a charity is not the founder. This usually freaks out those entrepreneurs that I work with when they discover that once their charity was incorporated, it's the governing board that becomes the owners of the charity in trust, which is why that term trustee is a carryover from English common law when nonprofit organizations were first developed in the colonies before we even became a country. So, who do you hold it in trust for? Well, the governing board is holding that corporation in trust for the community or the network of recipients of the mission of the organization, otherwise identified as the moral owners of the charity. So we'll come back to that in just a little bit. The owners of B Corps and social enterprises can be the original entrepreneur, depending on how the corporation is structured, or it could be the governing board. And just for your information, I encourage all of my clients to shift their printed information and their terminology and all of their electronic media, their website information from being an agency to being an organization, a nonprofit organization, not a nonprofit agency, because the legal terminology, and I won't necessarily ask Frank to dig back in the archives of his memory from law school, but the terminology using the word agency implies that you are an agent of some other organization or entity. So in some cases, that is the situation, that local chapters of larger national nonprofits would be identified as an agency of the Leukemia Foundation or the ALS Foundation. But in most cases, local nonprofit organizations are just that. They're a local organization and not an agency. Here in Ohio, there is a set of logistical steps, and they form the ongoing accountability for nonprofit entities. And this is also the case in most every other state. Some of the names of these organizations or state entities are a little different. But here in Ohio, you first have to register your charity with the Ohio Secretary of State. And that government entity grants nonprofit corporation status. And from there, you're allowed then to take that corporate status and submit it to the IRS to receive your EIN number. Then organizations must also must also register with the Ohio Attorney General, and his duty is to monitor the state laws and make sure everyone remains in compliance. And in most cases, your state will have that same responsibility granted to the Attorney General. From there, organizations register with the Department of Taxation for sales and use tax exemption, which is a big financial benefit to you in the long run. Then you can fill out the infamous 1023 form and submit that to the IRS to receive your determination letter. Once you get that letter, that becomes a gold standard. Bronze it, put it in a safe place, and keep it forever, because it will never need to be re-granted. Once you are determined to be tax exempt, then you can begin to grant tax exemption status to any of the gifts that you receive. Actually, you can backdate that to the date that you filed your 1023 with the IRS. There's a 1023-EZ form now that encourages people to fill the shorter form out and do the quick route, but there are some negative implications with that EZ because you're not permitted to generate more than $300,000 in charitable fundraising over the course of the first 3 years of your charity, or else you face consequences with fines and an ongoing concern by the IRS about your trustworthiness. You never want to go there with the IRS. Um, in many cases, you also need to file information and be recognized by a municipal charitable solicitation board, which is the case in Columbus, across Franklin County here in central Ohio. There is a charity solicitation board, and you must file annually with them copies of information that you also generated to fulfill your 990 obligation with the IRS, and that you must report annually to the Attorney General as well. Now, in my experience, there is frequent nonsense that occurs with governing boards, and we won't necessarily ask anybody to identify themselves about these kind of experiences, but to acknowledge that, yes, indeed, they do exist. And several of these affected Mary and her original experiences that brought her to my attention, or that brought me to her attention, trying to figure out what in the world am I going to do because these things affect my board. The first one is what I refer to as founder syndrome or founderitis. It's where going back to that baseline piece of information, where founders believe that they still own their charity, and they refer to it in the first person as mine, or my board and my organization and my net revenue. It does not belong to them, and oftentimes that's a huge shock. There's also, with regard to founder syndrome, a factor called aversion to change, or ATC. And the story that I frequently share about that is one about a for-profit corporation, because it's so public and remarkable in our memories, many of us anyway, that George Zimmer, who actually founded and created the organization called Men's Wearhouse, he owned the majority of stock, and he went on TV commercials and would braggadociously claim that I can guarantee that you'll love the way you look. And if not, we'll give you a refund. His board of directors found that out, didn't agree with it, challenged him, and then overrode him and actually voted him out. And that exact same scenario can occur with nonprofit organizations, where boards of directors can become disenchanted with the founder or the CEO, the executive director or CEO, and actually vote them out. Mission drift happens a lot, more frequently than what a lot of CEOs and executive directors like to claim. And that happens when a governing board or individual members of a governing board begin to go rogue and don't pay attention, and the idea gets presented at a governing board meeting, and several trustees will go, "Oh yeah, that's a great idea. We should do that too." And all of a sudden, allocation of resources take place, priorities shift, and before you know it, the charity is not fulfilling its mission because that has changed. And mission is where the money goes. And if you're not putting your money toward your mission, then all of a sudden compliance issues begin to pop up everywhere. And not only external compliance matters, but internal relationships begin to suffer as well. Disengaged board, I won't ask for a poll, but how many of you have a disengaged board where board members don't show up? When you talk to them, you begin to hear things like, "Oh, I was too busy. I was too tired. It's just not interesting to me anymore." And you guys don't miss me. There's 7, 8, 10, 18 other people on the board. They can all take care of it. I'll just stay in the background. That's not good for anybody and definitely not good for the board. And it will wreak havoc on your mission and your ministry. A failure to assess and plan. There are a lot of boards that just back out every time someone says that S word strategy. Why would anyone want to think about the future? We're busy dealing with the here and now and trying to figure out what has happened last month or last quarter. And it relates back to that aversion to change factor that many boards have to deal with. And last but not least is financial and program service malfeasance and the outright failure or lack of internal controls to actually monitor programs and services that are going on and hold the board accountable for its duty to actually carry out the mission of the organization. What stage is your organization in its life cycle? This inquiry scares a lot of governing boards. They don't want to own up to the fact that they aren't functioning at a high level, they're not producing good results, and they're not moving their organization forward. So there are 5 stages in this particular cycle. As you can see from the note off to the side, IRS has its own description of tax-related life cycles, including the termination of your IRS tax status and the fact that if that occurs, you have to go all the way back to the beginning and start all over again, which was a rugged trek the first time through. Second time through is even worse. So it behooves everybody to recognize that this cycle is like a sociogram. If there are any social workers in the group, you know what a sociogram is. Um, there is a hidden line between every one of these 5 dots to each and every other of these 5 dots. And if you are intentional about how your organization is operating and how your governing board is managing its responsibilities, it is possible to go from a declining stage directly back to a growth and change stage to be able to move your organization forward. And again, Mary, if I can use you as an example, you've gone through this cycle a couple of times with your board, have gone all the way to the declining stage and jumped right back to startup mode and rebuilt and redirected your board to reach the positive outcomes that you're getting. Now, there are also types of governing boards, and we'll hit on this just briefly and to identify the fact that there are various versions of board structure. And the first version, the advisory board, is really that group of folks that you tagged to get your corporation recognized and on track to begin operations. These are the 3 willing souls, warm bodies with regular breathing rhythm that you have selected to fulfill the obligations in your state to become incorporated. And when I do this as a training program for entrepreneurs, I expressly say to them, avoid the Frans. I checked the names before I clicked share my slides. There were no Francis's in the group, so I didn't notice any Karens either, but we're talking about Frans this morning. You want to avoid the Frans, which are friends, relatives, acquaintances, and neighbors when you're organizing or expanding your governing board. These are not these are not people who are going to benefit you or your organization. They may love you and be willing to do something for you personally, but that doesn't mean that that makes them a good selectee for sitting on your governing board. A patron board is usually high net worth individuals who've been selected um, for arts related organizations, particularly theaters and exhibit areas where large grants and gifts are needed to sustain operations, sell tickets, and make the public venue inviting for the public. Cooperative governing boards, pardon me, are boards that usually have gathered together without staff or management. These are what we frequently call volunteer boards, where everybody is a volunteer and yet everyone takes responsibility for some of the workload in operating the programs or services of the nonprofit entity. We'll skip down to number 5, which is Policy Governance Board. These organizations are usually very sophisticated and rather well funded. This concept of policy governance was introduced in the middle 1970s by John and Miriam Carver, and that it has a language all its own. It has a style and a temperament all its own, and it is an effective governance structure, but it takes a lot of investment up front to get it working. Sometimes 6 to 10 years worth of investment. A community engagement board is something that is evolving and has become popular over the last decade or so. And that is a group of like experienced individuals who are motivated to come together to serve a certain population that are experiencing the same kind of life intrusions that they experienced, alcoholism, drug abuse, um, human trafficking. These are the kind of social situations that are inspiring these kinds of governing boards. And the most common, and usually those that I work with directly, are management team boards, where they have a structure with committees, management, and staff. And the board is early on in its development, back to that developmental cycle chart. Early in their development, they serve as in an advisory capacity and as a cooperative governing board, and then begin to transition to a policy level thinking and practice, and begin to extract themselves from operations and move into development of policy practices and long range strategy for the benefit of the organization. So my guess is that most of the folks who are on this Zoom right now operate a similar kind of structure under the management team board concept. So we'll open it up for questions and comments. This gentleman pictured here is W. Edwards Deming, who was the father of modern production leadership. Again, for anyone in the social services field, if you've heard of continuous quality improvement or CQI, this is the person that you either love or hate, because his work, particularly with Japan after the close of World War II and the redevelopment of their economy and their productivity, It is all credited back to Mr. Deming. So we'll open it up at this point and see if does anyone want to share about what stage your organization is operating or what your board structure is like? Is it effective?
Dean, you might want to stop sharing so you can see everybody. There you go.
You can ask Megan. She just had a very successful first fundraiser, and they had a meeting right after. And not only did they celebrate, but they also made some really good changes and ideas. So Megan, why don't you share a little bit?
I was wondering if I was going to get voluntold. I was getting ready to raise my hand. Yeah, so my name is Megan Velick. I've been on these a few times. I wasn't able to be on last month. I founded Project Surprise Party in October of 2024, not 2004. Sorry about that. And we just had our first fundraiser. We have a board of 4 members. We would be more of the advisory board that are not friends. Genevieve helped me through the original board that, came to me, which were the Frans, and that fell apart right away. So then I went on the journey of networking and finding 3 other board members who were interested in the mission and what we were doing, not just because they knew who I was. So that definitely was a little bit of a hiccup, but obviously moving forward, anybody that I've met with and talked to have told them how important it is to yes, not have the friends and relatives, even though they might be excited for you, probably should not be on your board. So we just had our first fundraiser on the 28th of March, and the board was instrumental in helping it go off without a hitch. We had a debriefing board meeting just Tuesday. And so we're kind of in that. We're obviously a startup. We started in October, so haven't even been in existence for a year yet, but kind of toggling between growth and change. Obviously now having our first fundraiser, and even it kind of goes hand in hand for me with the evolve and mature, because some of that growth then will evolve us into hopefully obviously a better and stronger nonprofit organization. So I kind of like how you talk about the founders having that founderitis or the founder syndrome. One of the things that one of the board members brought up was changing the audience of attendees for the fundraiser that we had. So our fundraiser was called Corks and Confections for a Cause. It was a women's event. It was a 2-hour event. We had it at our school foundation building here in Elkhorn. We had a charcuterie company bring food. We had a mobile bartender service. We had 4 different vendors from the local community come that they paid a fee to attend. And so it was a very lighthearted, fun event. Our premises providing birthday packages to children. So it was more of just a party, a lighthearted party for females. So one of our board members at our debrief was, how about we open it up to, men and couples, and, obviously the more people that can come, we'll open the wallets. And my initial reaction was, but that's not how I want to do it. And so after we had a lot more discussion, and I actually talked with Genevieve about it afterwards, was change isn't bad. They were bringing it to the table because they want the success of our nonprofit. And so it challenged myself to realize that it isn't about me. It's not about what I want. We have a board for a reason. And the ladies that are on it, because right now we don't have any men currently, they have the organization's best interest. They're not trying to be mean people, so to speak. They truly have the best interest of the organization at heart. And so it made me think differently of, well, what, maybe we should, and maybe that means we have to change the event space because we need to be able to accommodate, potentially double the attendees if we're opening it up to a +1 for somebody. So we're in that growth and change, evolve and mature kind of all at once, which is exciting and fun. but I'm glad that I don't have to make decisions on my own. I think that has been probably the biggest experience having a board, is that I'm not in it by myself, and having broad knowledge of the three women that are on it brings so much value to the table on so many different aspects of the nonprofit organization that we have here.
Cool. Congratulations, first of
Thank,
all.
thank you.
Second of all, do you have the end plan in mind? Which is a question we're going to get to in section 3, which will be the month of June. That particular session will actually talk about succession planning as an element of operations. But succession planning begins at the beginning. So you should always do your planning thinking about what the end result is going to be, just like you did with your charity event. You didn't just plan it from the get-go. You had an outcome that you were focused on, and you planned backwards. You developed your operational plan based on what did you want to accomplish or achieve. And the same thing would be true as the entrepreneurial launcher of this particular charity entity, is what is the end game for you, and how are you going to plan your eventual removal or resignation from this entity that you've now launched. So that's something that everybody needs to think about, is how will I end my engagement with this organization in a way that doesn't ruin the organization and continues the mission forward.
Right. Haven't even thought any of that. So it's hard to think about that when you're literally getting your feet underneath you. But that's a great point of, I don't want it to end with myself, obviously. I want it to be something that continues on. So what does that look like for the future?
Megan, I want to say to you, absolutely congratulations. Absolutely congratulations. Oh my God, congratulations. And I say that because as I was hearing you talking, I was like, man, I sure didn't have that path. Woo. And when I was blessed to start COC, it all happened literally. I was in treatment. I had a need, couldn't find the help that I needed, turned to the church. The church said, yeah, we'll help you. And I'm like, somebody needs to be the voice to let people know where money does and doesn't go. And the church was like, yep. And I'm like, I know, we got to find someone. And they're like, Mary. And so I literally was thrown into it. As far as like board members, it was my son, which, I didn't know about Friends then. I didn't know anything about anything nonprofit. And so I had my son, and then I had 2 other people that I knew, and they were like, go, Mary, go, Mary, go. So I didn't have the board members that would say, hey, because in my mind, I think it's a good and bad thing, because I really believe that if I had a different type of board at the very, very beginning, I don't think we'd be where we are today. Because, I believe that if I had the board that was cheering me on. Mm-hmm. And so every advancement, they were cheering me on. So I didn't have anybody to reel me in. And that's how within, our first 4 months, we were national. And then in our first year, we were international. Because no one told me anything. All I knew is that we were going to do what we had to do. And that was it. And so I want to commend you for the fact that you connected with Genevieve and you listened to her. And then you had a successful fundraiser. Because our first 100,000 came because some woman heard me in the library speaking, and she was just moved by what I was saying. And next thing I know, I get a letter in the mail saying that they want to give us money, and I thought it was a scam. I was like, this is one of them Nigerian. You send portion and you get the rest. It's a scam. And the board was like, Mary, just fill the paperwork out and send it in. I'm like, no, because it's a scam. And I went ahead, humbled myself. I said, I'm gonna do it. But when the police come for me, y'all make sure you bail me out. And they were like, it's okay, Mary. And so I did. Them sent the information in and got a handwritten check It's absolutely a scam. Nobody sends a handwritten check for that amount.
Right.
But and I took it to the bank and I told them it was a scam. I need to talk to the fraud department because it was a scam. Kind of find out it was real. And spoke with the lady afterwards and she was like, I bet you thought it wasn't real. I was like, absolutely. I'm glad I didn't tear it up. And so having a proper board at the beginning, one that's not just cheering you on and wants to see you be successful, but actually join you in the pursuit of bringing it come to fruition, is so amazing. So I can't say enough. Congratulations. And Dean, I know I done grown up a lot.
I'm not going to reveal anything personal.
But it truly is, because when I started and I started talking to people before we, applied for our 501c3, these two ladies that were my acquaintances were so excited. One was coming off of a children's theater board, and another one had never been on a board, but they were so excited for me. And as soon as I paid the retainer for the attorney, then all of a sudden I think they realized that, oh, we're not just like meeting in your basement. Like, we're not just going to be some moms doing this fun thing. And so the board dissolved before I even had a board. And so I had always told my husband, I won't have a problem raising money. I didn't realize getting a board was going to be such a big deal. And so Genevieve heard many, many tears, many pleas, and I just kept reaching out of the people that I knew who knew people, and through acquaintances and other business connections, these three ladies, I would meet with them, had coffee, lunch, and then they'd, hear my spiel of what Project Surprise Party was going to do and what our mission was. And when they said yes, I was like yes, like, you want to be a part of it? And seeing them come alongside, and they kind of stepped back for the first fundraiser because I think they knew it was my baby. Like, I've had this in the back of my mind since July of how the first one would go, except for the first one was going to be in my backyard with a couple rented tables with some cheese and crackers that I cut up, a couple bottles of wine from the grocery store, and asking 10 of my closest friends to give me money for this nonprofit. And it became an event space with corporate tables. I'm sorry, I'm gonna get emotional. Corporate sponsored tables, donated raffle prizes, vendors who were more than excited to be a part of it and actually asked to be invited for next year's. And we were able to we ended up raising just over $5,000. We raised $3,000 the night of in person through raffle tickets, and $2,000 before the event. So that's all profit before or after all the expenses were taken out. So to even be able to say we raised a number with a comma in it just is a dream come true. So
Now, to capture the moment, and to offer feedback to you, Megan, and I don't want to step on your toes, Genevieve. You may have already offered this feedback to her, but those vendors, those attendees who actually took real active interest and made significant contributions, those are folks that you need to put on your potential board member list. The one that you keep in your hip pocket and you pull it out every time you go out and network and say to friends and acquaintances, do you know these people? Do you trust these people? Are they people that will support our organization? And begin doing your homework and your research for future board members, because it sounds like as your organization grows, you're going to need a larger board.
yeah, absolutely.
And we'll get into that in greater detail in session 2 in May when we talk about recruiting and selecting governing members for your governing board. Anybody else have comment or like to share? Quiet crowd. Okay, well, we'll go back to the presentation and move from here. If we can, if I can get it to move. And I can't.
You need to click, you can go ahead and launch it again, but I think you need to click on the PDF before you be able to launch it. Because if you're playing around on Zoom, what it's doing is it's recognizing a different page. So just click anywhere on that screen, and then you should be able to launch it.
There we go.
Yep.
Thanks, Frank.
But trust me, I've made my share of mistakes. This is not expertise. This is a bastion of failures. Just helping you.
Well, and I'm experiencing and bashing my failures right now too. So, and I'm exposing all of mine because I don't think there's an experience that anyone can share that I haven't seen, understood, or lived through myself with good and bad governing boards. So don't be shy about sharing experiences or posing questions. In a galaxy far, far away, long time ago, I graduated from the University of Illinois. And at that point in time, in my graduate education, we were instructed that governing boards had three fiduciary duties: the duty of care, loyalty, and compliance. However, Ohio, in its immense wisdom, has added a fourth duty, which is the duty to manage accounts. And basically, that's an extrapolation of the compliance duty that identifies a specific requirement. That means here in Ohio, governing boards and individual board members are specifically held accountable for making sure that the organization is financially sustainable into the future. So even if your state doesn't have four fiduciary duties, it does have the three that are listed up above. The duty of care that requires that board members must know and understand the function of their charity, and they must participate in a reasonable manner in everything that's going on. In the duty of loyalty, board members acknowledge that the charity and its interests are of more importance than their own personal interests. And if you look in the full IRS 990 form, there are actually several check boxes that you have to acknowledge to the IRS that your board is recognizing this loyalty responsibility by filling out conflict of interest policy statements. So if your charity is still young, if your board is still young, you need to make sure that one of the first policies that you develop is a conflict of interest policy, and that there's an annual confirmation by your board, by the members of your board individually, that they have received that policy statement and agreed to abide by it. And the third, or the fourth in Ohio, is the duty of compliance, and that is that board members are held accountable for the fact that the organization itself is compliant with all of its solicitation laws, tax provisions, and other accountability standards that it must meet, which becomes even more onerous if your charity organization deals with individual clients and the mental health or behavioral health issues related to individual clients. Then you need to also begin to focus on, with developing your board, their specific responsibilities and their for which they're held accountable. This is kind of the outline of a job description for individual board members. It is applied to and comprehensively engages every member of the board, both individually and collectively. You'll see that, this list, first of all, that comes from Board Source, which is a great resource for anybody who's looking for information, templated policy statements, things of that sort, you can get them from boardsource.org. It's been around for a long time. It's a really trusted resource, but they do lack specificity for individual states or locales. So you have to be careful. They only list 3 fiduciary duties and have skipped over Ohio with regard to duties for boards. But in this roster of 10 responsibilities, you'll see that the top 5, I've artificially segmented them into the first 5 and the last 5. The first 5 have to do with soft related issues that they're accountable for. So as your organization evolves, the board needs to make sure that the mission and the purpose are being carried out and that the board advocates for them. Their responsibility is the selection and support and evaluation of the executive director, for whom responsibility is delegated to the daily operations and management of the mission itself. And the board is also responsible for monitoring and strengthening the programs and services of the organization through an annual assessment. Now, some charities have developed dashboards, and boards meet on a monthly, semi-month, bi-monthly, or quarterly basis and review their dashboards, which encompass a report of the progress and experiences of their programs and services over the last period. And when they do that, they're fulfilling this particular responsibility to make sure that they are managing through a monitoring process, as opposed to managing by sticking their fingers in the operations to distract staff or distract volunteers from what really needs to be done. Not until you get to responsibility number 6 do you see that board, individual board members and the collective organization themselves are responsible for the financial resources of the charity. They're also responsible for monitoring and protecting those resources and maintaining oversight of what's going on. So it's always helpful to make sure that folks on your governing board are supported and uplifted by 1 or 2 folks in your team who actually have accounting backgrounds or experience and understanding with finances. Not that you're looking for CPAs to come and be a part of your board, but somebody who knows and understands finances and can actually read a financial report is very, very helpful. So you have to build and sustain a competent board, and to do that, you have to conduct regular and routine assessments of board members and the collective board itself. Again, Board Source is a great resource for templates on trustee assessment and governing board review. Chief and foremost is item number 10. And it relates circularly all the way back up to item number 1, where board members are asked to advocate on behalf of the organization to the public. And that circulates all the way back down to item number 10, where you as a board member are expected to represent in a positive light the organization to the public and to the local community. This is a part of the early life stage failure of many governing boards. As Mary was suggesting, her first board was go, Mary, go. But after the board meeting, those folks would step out into the public and never say a word about COC or Mary or the organization's needs or mission. It was a matter of, oh, I love Mary. I'm willing to support Mary. I'm going to encourage Mary. Go, Mary, go. Don't call me. And that will never work. And again, that's why you want to avoid those friends and begin to find people like Megan has obviously done in building the board in a new direction with people who are focused on your mission and willing to pull their weight. How the board evolves is a really important element for your organization. And I don't want to pick on you, Megan, but as you described your board's transition, um, they moved from the cheerleader, like Mary was describing her first board, into a responsible group who are committed to the mission of the organization. And that's reflected in this particular screen. This is Peter Drucker, who, even when I started in 1968, was already a stellar icon with regard to management theory and how organizations should function. And he became an even more stellar nonprofit management theorist. And his quote about the sign that should be over the top of every boardroom door is really relevant to the development of positive boards and productive boards. Because back in the day, everybody thought it was a great thing to be named to a governing board because they put it on their personal stationery. Charity organizations were notorious for listing the members of their governing board down the left side panel of their stationery so that they could brag to the public about who was on their board. However, there were a lot of people who joined boards just for the resume benefit that it brought them and not really to participate in and be accountable for the fiduciary duties that they're held to. So as Drucker says here, membership on a board is not power, it is responsibility. And people have to follow through and be accountable for their board membership in order for the organization to be successful. Culture is really an important element in nonprofit operations. It's important for for-profit businesses because it drives the bottom line, but it's not really something that you can't weigh it. You can't put it in a dump truck and drive it down the street, dump it in somebody else's lawn. But you can feel it. You can sense it. Sometimes you can even touch it. But it is unique. And as this screen shares, no board is exactly like any other board. Each has its own personality and a collective culture that's created by the people who come together to work and support the charity. Just like any other team, this is a great time to talk about teams and the impact of new players on teams when you recognize that it's the start of the Major League Baseball season. I am a lifelong Chicago White Sox fan because I grew up in Illinois, and I couldn't be more disappointed in my team last year, except for maybe how disappointed I might be this year. As they added players, they changed the roster, lots of changes in the management, but it doesn't seem to have had much positive impact on the team. We're hoping that that's not the case for your organization, but that you recognize the fact that as you add members to your board, or as former members roll off at the end of their term, and new members step on in place of those experienced board members, a new team emerges and a new set of relationships and cultural engagement between those members occurs. And that, in and of itself, begins to establish what your organizational culture is all about. As you grow your organization and begin to add staff, your culture will change. But in order to be totally successful as a nonprofit organization moving forward, the development of culture needs to come from the top and filter down. As the second bullet points out, you have a culture, whether you think it's there or not. And it can either be guided and grown and nurtured along from the leadership of the organization, or it will grow and fester and begin to percolate up, good, bad, or otherwise, and you'll have no control over it. So culture is vital to the success of an organization. Going back to what Drucker said, if you have strategy and you think you know where you're going, but you don't have a supportive, mutually supportive, and engaging culture, it'll eat your strategy for breakfast and you'll go nowhere. Your organization will not be successful. And you will have difficulty moving forward from wherever you're positioned. In the final bullet, I have challenged organizations where I have served by focusing on individual relationships. And that's what culture is all about and how it's built. One of the mantras that I've used consistently throughout my career is that there will be no secrets, no surprises, and no shortcuts. And when I say that, people look at me like I have three heads and can't possibly know what I'm talking about. But if you will work with your organization and your board with a level of trust, transparency, and respect, enhanced by good communication and follow through, then you'll be able to develop a culture that will positively affect the organization, its mission, and everyone who works for you or volunteers for you. There are documents that are required for your organization to have.
Dean,
yes, ma'am.
Sorry to interrupt you. I didn't know if you had seen my message. Because we're getting to almost to the end. It was like, where can we break at? And I think before we go into this part, it would be good to pause here. You've given so much information and it is amazing. And I'm taking notes and I'm screenshotting slides and I'm like, my God. But I know it's going on 1 o'clock and we want to make certain that we are mindful of the time. And so would we be able to, would your thought on pausing here and continuing, picking up next month here? Can we do that? Or how much longer do you need?
Give me 2 more slides.
Okay.
And this one I'll highlight by saying the most important document that a charity organization needs to focus on to impact culture and develop future success is the governing board's bylaws. They are the rules by which the board is structured and functions and needs to have very, very careful nurture. This is the hat that the governance and leadership team wears. This is the skipper hat from Gilligan's Island. And it identifies the leaders of the organization, and particular the board and the CEO. This is Gilligan's hat. And this hat is typically worn symbolically by the operations team and by the CEO when they're carrying out their daily obligations of managing the program and operations. It is also the hat that's worn by volunteers. And of key importance is that bolded element at the bottom of the screen that says, when a trustee or a member of the governing board is serving as a volunteer and supporting an activity, they are wearing the volunteer hat, and they are not a representative of the board at that point in time. They are serving strictly as a volunteer and do not have any authority or over other staff, or even could even speak on behalf of the board in that particular activity. So we'll pose those questions to everybody, and if you send me your email address, I'll be happy to share these slides with you. And here are 3 specific resources that I've relied on to help build my information, these slides, and guide my career. In particular, The Corporate Person by Harold Everson is a great resource. It's still available, even though it was published in 1998. Updated versions are available now. And also helpful for organizations that are trying to transition their board from a non-productive model to a very productive model. I recommend Policy versus Paperclips by Eugene Fram. There we go.
Woo, we made it. Definitely. I'm glad this Zoom was being recorded, because you gave so much information that is so beneficial to those of us that are in the nonprofit space. There are a few people that had to jump off, which I'm like, oh my God, I hope we get through, or at least to a place where we can pause. So I want to say thank you. In our last few minutes, Dean, you know I love you. And Lord knows, I'm like, I need to schedule a catch up with Dean because we got new stuff going on. And so to everybody that was here, thank you to Genevieve, Crystal, Frank, Kurt came on as well. We are part of the steering committee. If anyone is interested in being part of that, again, as Frank mentioned, definitely let us know. We will win the team, or we'll win the game with more players. And so you are invited. Our next meeting, our next gathering is May the 9th. So please put it on your calendar. Let everyone know. The people that you know that are in the nonprofit space, invite them to be part of this. Also, follow our YouTube channel, because this will be available on the YouTube channel. In the chat, Crystal has shared a survey. So please respond to the survey and give us feedback. And then last but not least, we have a Facebook channel or a Facebook page. Please like the Facebook page so that way we can increase engagement on that as well. Crystal, Genevieve, Frank, am I missing anything? Is there anything that you would like to add? Okay. Final remarks from Dean.
Thanks for listening.
Hey,
does anyone have anyone that they would like to close with?
I will say this, and you know, certainly more people involved in the steering committee helps, and that might be more than you want, and that's fine. I get it. You got to hang with me. It's not a good thing. My kids have all left the house, so there's a clue there. No, but invite other not-for-profits. That's helpful. I think the more we have here, even if they're involved, whether you're involved or not, but the more sharing, it can only benefit everybody. So between now and next month, just share it out. Say, hey, you should come see this. So thanks.
Thank you. With that, Dean, again, thank you. Thank you everyone for being here, and have a wonderful rest of the month. We're in April. Easter's coming up, resurrection, all those things. And then we will enter into May. So just know, plan to meet us on the 9th, and have a blessed day.